All right, welcome everybody. Good morning to our May meeting. Let's see, we have all the board members, Vicky by Zoom, and Sienna, Peg, and Mary Lee and myself. I'm assuming you are Matt.
I am.
Okay, good, welcome. Kip and Stella and Lindsay, and then Diane from Friends and Foundation. So I'm happy to see everybody. And I am wondering, since I've called the meeting to order and established a quorum, if anyone would like to make a motion to adopt this morning's agenda.
I moved that we adopt this agenda.
Thank you, Steve. Do I have a second? Second. Thanks, Peg. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Okay. So we'll move on to the approval of minutes. We have the March 13th, April 10th, and April 11th meetings. Any changes, little typos, any issues? And if not, do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I'll move to approve the minutes of the March 13, 2025 regular meeting and the April 10, 2025 voucher meeting.
Can you just list one down?
And the April 11, 2025 special meeting as well.
Great. Do I have a second?
Second.
3 seconds. Okay. Any discussion? Okay, favor? Aye.
Aye.
None opposed. Okay, any correspondence?
As usual,
None. And no public comment that I can see. Nobody on Zoom.
Nope.
All right. Matt George, Teen Program Coordinator. It is nice to meet you. Welcome to the meeting. And if you're ready, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, so I came with a little bit of information on teens that are in the library, how they have been using our space, and then also teens in Jackson in general, and kind of coming from a point of advocacy and also amplifying what they've been telling me over the last year. So I'll start with our teen advisory board because that's our most direct way of getting information from our teens. Currently we have 10 active members, which is pretty great. And they're spanning a pretty big diaspora of people in Jackson. So we have members that are in the Jacksonville High School, the Jacksonville Middle School. We've got different homeschool groups, as well as demographic representation from LGBTQIA students, as well as students with disabilities. So the feedback that I get from the Teen Advisory Board has been really rich and really good to help inform me on what I'm doing at the library and hopefully help inform everybody when it comes to teens and teen services.
Can I interrupt you?
Yeah.
Latin
Yes, I believe currently, but there's been no self-reporting, so, and there's been no request for demographic information, so other than things that have been verbally self-reported, I did not include it. The first thing that I want to jump into that I thought was really cool was when TAB was reforming, when I was first starting, I did a kind of application that wasn't really an application. It was more of like a fill this out to tell us why you are excited to be here. And some of the responses that I got from that were really cool. One of them was I was a part of the Teen Advisory Board last year, and it was very exciting and rewarding to get to have influence on decisions at the library and engage with the community. I love the library, and being able to do even more to help it grow is something that I'm passionate about. That was a returning high school member. I want to join TAB because I want to make fun programs in the library and be more a part of the library community. And I want to join TAB to gain volunteer opportunities and impact choices made for our library. And then the last one I put in here was the shortest one, but I felt like it was the best one. It just says, because I love the library, which I thought was really cool. But the through line there is that a lot of them talk about community. A lot of them talk about impacting decisions that impact them and their peers. And a lot of them talk about volunteer or being able to be engaged in different aspects in the community as a whole. So those are kind of the areas that we then focused on throughout the year. I have a little segment here about why libraries are important to teens as potentially a refresher if we don't know. Libraries function as after hours, after school spaces and places for teens to go. Between the hours of 3 o'clock and 6 o'clock in the evening are peak hours for juvenile crime, experimentation with drugs, alcohol, and cigarettes. this is all information that I got off of ALA, and there's a after school alliance also study that I have that I can link if you guys would like it. Teens aged 12 to 18 receive the least financial support. So that is government, philanthropic, and funding. And it lags behind birth to 11. And the thing that shocked me the most is it also lags behind 19 and up. So they receive the least amount of investment out of all of the age groups in each of those categories.
And do
and
you
then-
mean like federal spending or?
So this
state,
is
like,
governmental, philanthropic, and nonprofit spending. So this is both private and public sectors. They're the smallest percentage. However, 97% of libraries provide a dedicated section of their library that hosts teen books, materials, and services, as well as obviously providing programming and events. So that's kind of just an overview of why it's important for the library to be able to host the teens and be able to have a space for them here. And it's been really cool because over the last year, and I know I've sent in a couple of things from what the teens had said that were hopefully focused packets of information to kind of give you guys an insight into what they were looking for. But the teens specifically over and over the last year have asked for these things if there was ever going to be a development of a teen space. Comfortable seating, seats that can move, beanbag chairs, a joined couch, so it can be like attached, detached, moved around, adjustable lighting, lamps, charging ports, and a creative area that could host a multitude of different things, whether that's either materials, it could be a table with different art supplies and different things that they can use passively, and things like that. All of those things, I realized when I was putting this all together, are not structural. Those are things that we can provide regardless of if we have walls. Which I think is really exciting because that is a lot of that.
Electrical cords.
Well, like the charging ports,
Charging cords.
100%, because we've moved to our remote, like our movable, I'm forgetting what they're called.
Charging box.
Charging block. So because the main wing, the ports were closed, we can use those charging blocks or maybe get one or two or have some of them set aside at a certain hour that the teens could use for charging their laptops and things on the cassette table. And so all of these items, I believe, are pretty achievable within what we're currently able to provide. So that's kind of the teens in the library and what they've kind of expressed that they're excited and what they like, and teens in Jackson in general. Overall, the teens have been expressing that there is nowhere to be. They have been kicked out of Albertsons. Yeah,
Where did you collect this information from? Like,
this information is from the Teen Advisory Board. I can go back into the Teen Advisory Board minutes and I'll show the document with you guys. That would be-
No, that's okay, I was just.
Yeah.
Wasn't sure if it was a community-wide survey or done by the schools or.
Yes, so this is primarily Teen Advisory Board and also teens that come to the programming. I'll usually ask questions ambiently, because they like that approach a lot better than when I give them the surveys. For the surveys that I did recently we have a game-based program, the Dungeons and Dragons program. I made the survey very fun and kind of game-based so that it was like digestible and quick. But yes, so that's where this information is coming from. They have been kicked out of Albertsons, Smiths, and Target after school because there were large groups of teenagers that were congregating in those spaces. Teens in our community have also communicated that they need a space where they feel safe, valued, and supported. Right now, many are left without a place to belong. So this is also work that and information, I suppose, that I've been getting from the high school, from communications both with Annette Lieberman and some of the English teachers over there when I was doing a program earlier this year, was that they were looking at making some kind of outdoor seating area or something that we could really have a kid engage in, but they realized that that would only be functional for certain parts of the year. It wouldn't be necessarily something that they could provide direct programming at. They would need to partner with nonprofits. It became more and more complicated the more that they were discussing it. And so I think there's a lot of barriers to entry for creating a teen space outside of a place like the library that is a publicly owned space, and it is something that they can come to any hours that are open. And And so I think that there's a pretty solid argument to be made that we are one of the most perfect places to have something established for them. From the teen advisory board directly, regarding the culture of the teens in Jackson. So this is the way that the teens interact with each other. This is also the way that the teens kind of feel living in Jackson. These are direct quotes. There's an environment of judgment towards people's hobbies. Kids in Jackson don't get a lot of exposure to stuff. And then I've added a little like explanation of what stuff is. The stuff they were talking about was that there was a general consensus that there's a lack of representation in the community, which hurts visibility as well as education on diversity. And I think that the library has information, we have accessibility, and we have the ability to get that information into the hands of the teens and public. And so I think we're uniquely situated to be able to communicate all of the things that they're really excited about and help them amplify their own voices to kind of share that with their peers. Moving on from that a bit, teen interactions at the library. So this is where I was kind of distilling down, and I wanted to know what was their experience at the library currently, what they were feeling, why they used the library, what were some of their favorite spaces, and pretty much across the board, they were saying they liked the youth wing, the main wing, and the lobby, which was very telling to me because that is very unspecific. That is and I was like, okay, and there's different areas that different kids liked out of all of the different spots. And what ended up kind of coming up over and over again was the way that they were interacted with at the library, because there was kind of a nebulousness to where they're supposed to be or not supposed to be. A lot of them have a perception that we're a very like quiet library, which I thought is fascinating because we're not. Right, yes, yeah, 100%. And so I thought that that was fascinating, but it ended up boiling down to the teen advisory board had a really great conversation when we had 8 of our members, which was a pretty full day. And I asked them, how do they want to be spoken to and how do they want to be treated when they're at the library? And these are the things that they had let me know, their direct quotes that I wrote down to relate to you guys. One of them had said, not like I'm a child, speak to me like I matter. One of them had mentioned to talk with respect. One had said not passive aggressively. And another had said, when teenagers make mistakes, they cannot be yelled at like little kids. And I think that based on the conversation that we had had during the teen advisory board, it was really telling to me that this is also something that percolates into the community as a whole. And I think that there's a lack of general support for teenagers in the community as a result of that kind of paradigm that we seem to have for some bizarre reason. But I wanted to, and that's kind of my last point, I wanted to end on a really cool thing that I got from the training that I went to this summer, the National Summer Learning Convention. I was really excited because the former Secretary of Education was there. And one thing that he said is like ironed into my brain for the rest of my life. And it's love is an evidence-based practice. And I think that we see results when we are most effective. And I think that there's a lot of ways that that can look and that can manifest, but I think ultimately it's very responsive. And so what I've been trying to do is ask them what they are excited about and ask them for their interests and to be able to provide even a semblance of that with what tools I have. The library to some of our teens is going to be the only library that they're interacting with. And the way that we impact them is going to be how they interact with libraries later in life. And I think that that is a really important mindset to kind of start with when we're thinking about the ways that, especially our younger patrons, regardless of if they're teens or little itty bitties are here, is that the way that they're forming a relationship with the library is how they're going to carry on interacting with libraries in the future. And so I've kind of held on to that as my like driver. Those are all of my things. Sorry for the mild speech.
Thanks. I'm like teary, love is.
Who knows? When I was writing out all my notes and I had to culminate it all, I'm not gonna lie, I was weepy and I had to text some of my coworkers and be like, what am I doing? I'm so like. Just-
Thanks for all your work. I'm curious if you're going to the Youth Mental Health Summit
I
next
am,
week.
yes,
Cause
yes,
I think you'd get a lot of also just.
Yeah.
Input. from teams.
I think that the view that there's, what I wondered is two things. If you can go back to the advisory board and raise some sort of question about, okay, this space was yours, what would it look like
yeah,
and where? Given the space that we have to work with, so that would be probably helpful for us and,
yeah.
making that happen. And then, if you would have any thoughts about how you would like to change the space, given what we have.
Yeah. So that's actually an excellent point, and those questions have been asked, and I've gotten some responses that are really cool. We have kind of a consensus that they came to, which I think is first off great, but also it's a bit of an ask. They're hoping that because there's such a huge diversity within the grades 6 through 12. I mean, every year, just like neurologically, chemically, there's such advancement changing. They want there to be kind of a doubling down of where the teams are already habitually using the space. So if we can set up services, study aids, potentially the nonfiction section, and other things that the older teams would directly be using or would help impact them during their like study hours, study crunches, things like that. In the main wing, that would be very beneficial. What that could look like is a shelf that has some of those resources on it, and then potentially maybe a signage that we could put on a table from the hours of like 4:30 to 6:30, just requesting that other patrons maybe allow teams to use that space specifically for group study. And the opposite end of that for the littler ones, for the middle schoolers through early high school, they communicated kind of the need for a very multifunctional space that can adapt to whatever they're interested in. Can be loud, can be quiet, and they've decided that the left side of the wing, where there was a teen space years ago, would be ideal for that, the kind of back half of that past the YA section near those window seats. And so all that could look like is basically bringing in a couple of pieces that would be functional and kind of aligned with what they're excited about, such as like adjustable lighting, making sure that there's access to power, probably putting some kind of gaming system back there so that use that if they'd like to, but also making sure that there's tables and also study aids and things in case they need to do some group work. So right now, what it looks like in the responses is that they're kind of requesting 2 spaces, which, like I said earlier, I feel like it's kind of a doubling down, but it does, in my eyes, feel like slightly more, because if it's one giant space, then I'm like, okay, we can like ask for this one giant space and work on that, but maybe it is, better in the interim, not building things to just kind of meet them where they're at.
Yeah, it's good input.
Yeah, no, that's really. I have just a curiosity, is there all tutoring that's done in Teton County is like a contract with the tutor? Or
Yes.
So there, but could a team make that connection with a tutor through the library? Is there?
We have a lot of tutors that come to the library. There is not currently a direct way to facilitate a like tutor to student connection because most of the tutors are contracted, so they're asking for money in exchange, which totally fair and makes sense. There's been chatter about doing there's First in Family I've talked to a couple of times about doing some creative like either study group or specifically for like a college essay writing type of experience, and those types of things we can facilitate, but there's not really a good connector for that the library can facilitate, other than it being a public space and our public forums, that those tutors can be posted on. Just because there's that monetary transaction.
Any other questions for them? Really helpful, thank you so much.
Just wanted to add, it was really.
Thank you.
Well, and thank you guys for all the work you're doing and the support that you have for the library, because I hear a lot of great things about Fort, so it's very cool to meet you guys.
That first quote you wrote, I was like, that sounds like my application to be on the board. It's like, yeah. So, yeah, great. Okay. Thank you so much. Let's see.
Okay, I got a lot of stuff to catch up.
Thank
Thank you so much.
All right, so we're gonna move on to the financial information and reports. Ella.
Thank you. So today we have one report that we don't typically have, the estimated remaining expenditures. So what I'd like to do is maybe start with our regular
Sure.
documents and then move on to that. In your Teams folder, and I realize Vicky was saying she didn't have access to Teams. You had some of your reports that were for March and April. Reason being that, as you know, April was a voucher meeting, so you didn't actually see the March reports. Originally on the agenda, we did have links to the March reports, but then this week the April reports came in, so that's why we changed the agenda to just have the April, because of course that's the most current information. Regarding the revenue reports, in March and April, we did see an uptick in receipt of passport fees, and the reason to that is that as spring break was coming along, we did see a huge uptick in appointments requested. Right now, we're kind of seeing a little bit of a lull, but that's why March and April, we did have a great amount of revenue in passports, is because basically every single appointment was full and booked. We're continually seeing the interest income be very valuable to us. And Kip and I have not talked about this, but I imagine in June we'll probably come to you, as we've had in the last couple of years, requesting to move current interest income into our capital reserves. So I think you could probably expect that maybe next month. In terms of April, we also had revenue for both of our grant sources. One of our staff members, Leah, received a McMurray grant to attend a writers' conference in March. And the revenue there was $403. Typically, when somebody receives a grant, what we do is we have them write that check over to the county, and then through their credit cards and so forth is how they pay when they're actually at a conference. In this case, Leah absorbed those costs herself, so this 403 was the remainder of the expenses that she did not directly pay for out of pocket, out of that grant. We also have a grant amount from the Foundation and Friends for, in the April revenue report, for a little over $1,000. This is the reimbursement that we get in the current fiscal year budget. We did request funding for postage for interlibrary loan packages from the Foundation and Friends. So that amount was a reimbursement for postage. What I will do though, next month with our vouchers, then I will incorporate that as part of an expense that we'll pay to Pitney Bowes. So that actually will be payment to our Pitney Bowes postage, but it's not reflected this month. So that's a general overview of revenue. Now I'm looking at our expenditures for April. What I want to jump down to is the very last line item, the budget to gap. This is an amount we haven't seen in previous reports. I did, if you
Could you tell me again where that is?
that's in the April expenditures and appropriations, and it's the very last account line item.
Okay.
I see it. So. A couple of things about this is that, one, I did query, both our county clerk and treasurer. Because I wasn't understanding, is this an amount, where is this coming from, et cetera. So I did hear back from Katie Smith's county treasurer, two things. One, important to note, the description name, the word depreciation is left off, it doesn't fit there. So what that means is that the auditors have determined that this is the depreciation, I guess for the year that they were evaluating. And so this amount, as we understand it, is not actually. It's not actually an expense amount, it's not actually any expense that we're actually paying out of our budget. It's just one of these. Accounting principle items that they just have to account for our depreciation for. So I just want to make that clear, that that's not actually money we're paying out of our budget. But as I said, in previous years, we have not seen this actually reflected. I did go back and look at our fiscal year 24, and I didn't see any budget to gap, so I'm not sure why the county is reflecting it now, but
Gaps.
general accounting principles, actually. Let's see the word. Accepted accounting principles, yes. So it's just related to government accounting, isn't my understanding, so.
It's really interesting, because then it says budget to GAAP depreciation, and they're all zeros, so anyway, it's
Yeah.
all accounting and it
Right.
doesn't really affect our choices, or it's kind of how it ends up at the end of the year, if you will.
Correct.
Okay.
And,
There's a lot of line items related to this.
Okay,
yes,
but
and,
it's appropriate that there are zeros in those lines?
I'm sorry, Vicky,
It's zeros until it's 220,000.
Yeah. Vicky, did you have a question? I didn't quite hear you.
Yeah, just, I'm wondering, there are almost all zeros in that whole file, and then all of a sudden, adjusted budget says
Yes.
220,000. Is that where we're
So-
starting from?
So that's what the auditors at the end of their fiscal 24 audit, I guess, determined was the asset depreciation, is the way I
Oh.
understand.
Okay.
In terms of this report, I guess an important item to mention is some of these account numbers, the reason you see zeros is these are general account numbers that are also used elsewhere in the county. And so other departments presumably do have budget amounts attached to these different account numbers, but we do not. So that's
Okay.
why. And I guess just the way that the county has to produce the reports, they have to include these other account numbers, even though they don't apply to the library. So
Okay.
One more
Thank you.
question, at some point, then, is it, tallied up, or, what's the word I'm trying to use, does it get resolved at some point? When an audit happened, like, on other boards, you would actually see the audit, and this would all start to make sense after the fact. Is that something we'll see, or we don't know because it's new?
the way it was explained to me was that this is not new, but like I said, I did go back and look at our previous, and I have not seen this reflected on our documents. The county does receive an official audit package, if you will, and I know in some years they have posted that to their website. I actually haven't checked recently if that is on there. I know that their audit process did wrap up around November, I believe it was, which is pretty standard for them. So I can certainly double check and then forward if that information is yet posted on the county website. Does that answer your?
Yes, I think probably the big question, because I'm not an accountant, or do I want to be one? Is, does this affect any of the decisions this rates, these kind of auditable line items. It sounds to me like it's there for, more for their purpose than for our.
Yes, and I would say
That helps
that's
me.
Yes.
probably, one thing while we're on this topic that Kip and I have still tried to make sense of is we've been given information on what qualifies as a county asset. And we find that every now and then we get, that information changes. So as an example, we are told that one of our larger assets is the materials collections of books.
Mhm.
Even though not a single book, is maybe $25 tops typically. However, our collection of computers, printers, those do not qualify as an asset. So it's a bit nebulous and we've tried to get more
We don't understand.
clarification.
Because grouped together, the computers are the valuable asset and worth more individually than a book, but
So in our previous budgets, before the county was playing a part in our budget process, did the library get more credit for those assets, or is this like a county anomaly, or?
So a couple of points to that. So before the library was more a part of the county accounting, the library actually had their own annual audit that the library went through. When we moved over to the county, one of the things that we found out, and so the library did produce an asset list that they turned into the county every year at that time. When we moved to the county, one of the things that we found out is the asset list that the library had been producing seemed to be more of an inventory of everything, and over time, that asset list really got pared down for what the county wanted. So there was reporting to the county when the library was more of its own accounting entity, however, I don't know also if the firms use, if they change what their determination is of an asset, that's also something I don't know.
Seems like, to me, it seems like it's just a traditional look at a library's books. But the libraries have become way more than books over the last 20 years.
Yes.
Yeah.
So, as an example, the van is considered an asset and when we determine something as an asset, there is like an actual little tag that you attach to the item and there's a form we turn into the county saying we've purchased this is an asset, but to give you an example of why I'm saying it's somewhat nebulous, several months ago, you as the board approved a repair to our HVAC, which was a component called the Jace. I don't know if that rings a bell. We recently were told that because that overall price point, that needs to be declared an asset. However, that overall price point, the majority of that was actually one-time labor to that fix. And so that's something I'm still trying to sort out with the county is how is a one-time labor considered a permanent asset? And yet we were told, oh, the auditor said that is. So I'm gonna fill out the form to make that an asset, but, so it's been a little bit confusing, quite frankly, for Kip and I. And so generally when the clerk in the treasurer's office says, hey, I saw this item with a certain price point, can you produce an asset form with it? At this point, I'm just going by what they're requesting of us, even though it seems to change. So.
Okay.
I
I think you did.
Yikes, yikes.
And so, let's see, one other thing just to make mention of, I wrote this in my report. Under account item 227, postage and freight. So the majority of that expenses is our postage, and also we use UPS as a courier service to transport materials between the two library locations. So that's primarily what comes out of that fund. When we started doing passports, so we have a credit account with Pitney Bowes, which is our postage meter system. And then periodically we'll load up our machine to add more postage. When we started doing passports, Lindsay and I were realizing we were running out of postage more frequently because of doing daily passport mailings. And then sometimes it's also become a point where we almost think we might run out of postage just because we know Pitney Bowes hasn't received payment due to the timing cycle of vouchers and so forth. So Lindsay recently approached me and asked if she could inquire with Pitney Bowes if we could increase our credit line. So kudos to Lindsay for thinking of that. We did get an increase in credit line, so now we're at a much more comfortable place where we're not gonna be worried each month, oh no, are we gonna run out of postage and what will we do? So I just wanted to make that notation. However, that doesn't change the budget, it's just what we're paying for each month. So, and then regarding the capital reserve fund expenditure report, majority of the expenditures were for the access control and camera install projects that we've brought to you several months ago. Those projects are now completed. So that's that information.
Is that just for the trash enclosure area? Or is it, cause on this expenditure report, it says trash enclosure repair, 387, and then it's the larger cost of the access control and the camera install. So is it for the trash enclosure area, or is it more system-wide eventually this year?
So that's a great question. That trash enclosure repair, that was one separate item. What happened was, I forget which, if it was our cardboard recycling or what, but somehow when they were backing their vehicle in, it damaged the door, and so we had to get the door repaired. So that's a totally separate item. From the access control, those were the door panels that we recently did. And then the cameras were replacement of the cameras here because they were at their end of life and one of them was no longer working, as well as we installed 2 cameras over at Alta. So those are actually all 3 separate projects, if that makes sense. Thank you. And then on deposit with the state library, as of April, we have almost $50,000 on deposit with the state library. And then in today's vouchers, there's also a smaller amount of funds that we're shifting over to the state library. And then just as a reminder, staff send their book orders and DVD, CD orders to the state, and then the state just merely takes care of the invoicing and so forth. That's why we have these funds on deposit.
Is that gonna be impacted by their cuts? I know, yes, and stuff.
Couldn't be.
No, because the accounts that we have there, it's our understanding those cannot be touched. So, and that's also why sometimes periodically we will send money to that fund, is just that we know we have that money on reserve. We also do make a little bit of interest each year with those accounts, so, that's a bonus. it's our understanding from the state too, at any point, if we wanted to not participate in this program, we could pull our funds if we chose to do so. And we can move funds around within the accounts that the state has for us, so. We have a little bit of leeway what we want to do with those funds. But basically, they're untouchable, if you will.
And it'll-
Supposedly, unless,
Funds over from one year to the next, which we wouldn't be able to do otherwise.
Vicky, did you have a question?
not really a question. I was just making a comment that they're untouchable right now, but there's this sensation in my head that other people might not think they're untouchable.
Thanks for that. It is. We are living in interesting times.
Yes, we are.
Okay, I know that's a lot more information than usual. If there's no further questions, I would like to just move on to this unique report we have this month. Fiscal 25 estimated remaining expenditures. So the week after we had the special board meeting to discuss the revision to the proposed fiscal 26 budget. At one of Kip's county directors meetings, then directors were given the directive to please come back to the county and produce a forecast for where we expect to land with fiscal 25 expenditures. So that's what this basic spreadsheet is. There are several accounts that I did not even touch. Those are primarily being library staff salaries and related accounts. I did not do any predictions with those because those amounts each year are budgeted by the county clerk. So I just left that as is. With the exception of workers' comp. Our workers' comp, the library does pay that directly quarterly, so 4 times per fiscal year. So with that amount, we had already paid 3 out of our 4 amounts for the year, so I was able to make what I was pretty sound educated guesses to where we might land up. So we're possibly gonna wind up $138 roughly short in that fund, but that overall is a very small amount compared to where we'll land for the year. Additionally, I did inquire of the collection services manager, Susan Centrella, about where she thought the various library materials funds were gonna wind up. She felt that pretty much those expenditures will be spent down, so I did not do anything with those amounts. And then the other 2 staff who have large budgets are Rick Smith, our facilities maintenance coordinator, and James Kima Silva, our IT administrator. So I did get estimates from them as to where they felt their budgets were gonna land. There is one budget that both James and Rick share. So I took their information, put that together. And then there's a couple of budgets also, for example, telephone. That James primarily has that budget, but then there's also some items that come through that James is not responsible for, so I tried to take his guesstimate and mold that with other information that I had. Likewise, another similar fund like that is our dues and subscriptions, 330-000. That fund includes software, which James is responsible for that amount. But then also in dues and subscriptions are other amounts and bills and invoices that Kip and I primarily see. So again, took James's prediction and then molded that with the information that I had from what Kip and I see with that account. So I guess what I want to say overall is there is one budget, printing and ads, that we know for sure, at this point, we overspent that budget. I believe that that primarily was due to some of the marketing that we did for the space planning project. So that's over and done. So really that budget won't be touched in anymore this year. But the bottom line is overall, even with some of the predictions of possibly going over budget in some of these accounts, overall, it looks like we will be underspent at the end of the fiscal year. So.
That's great news.
By a fair amount. Right, 66 without the gap thing.
Right. And I will add too, when this report was done, I did not have the information from Katie Smith's about where the gap came from. So that's why I also had a little note that the library does not assign this because I didn't have that information yet, so.
What does happen when a county agency overspends their budget?
That is a great question. Unfortunately, we have not wound up there. So I'm not sure where the county would pull, if they just pull from general reserves or how they would manage that.
Do have to go
Overall.
to commissioners and ask for a budget adjustment. Partnership with the county clerk. And I assume it comes from another department that didn't go over, is my guess. But we have not done that. The reason this was prepared was because of the anticipated shortfall for FY 26. They were asking every department not to, don't try and go and spend everything by the end of the year, as you might normally do. Because this can be used toward the shortfall for next year. So that's why we're gonna let that, it's the reversion that you'll hear the county clerk talk about a lot too. This is our estimated reversion this year or next year. We individually as departments can't carry money over, but the county as a whole can carry funds over.
And this was submitted to the county clerk and the BCC administrator. I haven't heard feedback one way or the other. I don't know if Kip had any.
I don't know if it was where, if that full number was used or. I do have on here a short update for the budget, so I might as well just share that now. As I understand, we're at a shortfall of about $6 million for next year. And the last meeting I attended, I missed this week, so I'm not sure how this week's meetings went. But we were told don't need to expect any more cuts, to be asked for any more cuts. That the mill rate will likely be increased enough to at least cover the shortfall. So as far as that was in last week's paper as well, so I'm going to assume that's where we're still at. They do have, from what I understand, the votes to support an increase in the mill rate, so.
And that's just a simple vote by the commission, and then when does that start?
July 1.
Yeah,
This is about 1.5, I guess the $6 million is about a 1.5 to somewhere between 1.5 and 2 mil increase. Each mill it brings in about 3.5 or $3.8 million.
And just to reemphasize, this was the best educated guesstimate, but we'll see where we actually wind up.
I mean, it's such a low, so Stella put me outside, she's been saying her middle name should be budget. Budget. Good talking with you, so thanks for all smart me. Anything else on those reports that you or Kip want to share? Otherwise, we could move on to payment of library vouchers. I don't have anything else. Okay, great. would someone like to make a motion?
I can do that for the vouchers.
Yes, please.
Okay, I'd like to move for the library board to accept the payment of April library vouchers in the amount of $82,818.75.
I have a second. Second. Any discussion? I'll just note on the agenda. I think it should be a period. I mean, this probably doesn't matter because we're speaking, we're saying, but it could look like 82 million. Okay, so.
Oh,
Yeah.
boy.
Okay, any discussion about those? Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
And thank you, Vicky.
Oh, you're welcome. As usual, I drove poor Stella crazy.
Okay, Kip, it is over to you.
Okay, I already gave you a little bit of budget information that I have. Other things in the report, actually things that were sent separately. Yesterday, I think I forwarded something that summarized all of the EV projects that are going on at the library. I think that was probably very helpful. I know staff were asking Stella a lot of questions, so I thought maybe the board would be interested that there's the partnership with Yellowstone, Teton Clean Cities with the Lightning F-150 that may be out on the lot today. I don't know.
So I know you said it's not a checkout from the library, but how does somebody, if they want to borrow that truck?
There's a
Contact.
QR code to scan, or they can go directly to, I believe, LVE or Teton Clean City, Yellowstone Teton Clean Cities website. And you can book it for, I don't know, initially I was told 7 days, then it was 5, and now I've heard 3, so I don't know what the extent of it is. But it's several days that you can borrow it for free of charge. So,
And then do you come to the library to get the keys?
nope,
You also go there?
yeah,
Okay.
it's just here for visibility because when it was. The last one was down at LVE, and I don't know that people knew that it was there, or it wasn't high visibility. So that's here. The county had an extra EV charger that they had gotten through some other grant project. And it's just a small EV charger that they wanted to place somewhere, so that will be placed at Alta. And we're trying to figure out exactly how to install it and make that available. And then we're part of, again, Yellowstone, Teton Clean Cities, big grant project with the town, with several other entities, and the county as well, to install EV chargers around the county. And that is moving forward as fast as possible, so that the funding is still there. We met this week to get an RFP out to install the chargers here. We do have to install a new transformer, and so there's a lot of work that needs to be done. And for that grant, the library and the foundation are each providing $25,000 toward the cost. And we get what the exact grant amount was, it's like $215,000, I think. And that will have to be completed by June of next year. Yeah,
And it'll be 4 chargers, I think.
6 chargers, 4 level 2 and 2 level 3, I believe.
Wait,
And at the moment, there's going to be installed against the row of parking spaces against the Grove. But we also were looking at another possibility of being in the same row, the last row against the Virginian, depending on where the transformer and power comes from. So other things in my report, we had a really good experience with the fire department last week. We did a wildfire mitigation walk around of our building and the Alta building. Just to see how we can harden our buildings against any possible wildfire. And so we have a very nice report that I did include in your packet, so you can see. There will be some changes to the landscape.
I was so
And-
worried about it.
I know, I was like,
Yeah.
oh, does that mean all the,
Like the lavender or whatever. the
No,
salt-
that won't go away. The catnip will stay there.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll stay there. Some of we've been using wood chips, and so that's discouraged. There's some plantings that are way too close to the building now. So we can probably trim them and leave them as long as there's bare earth or rocks or something placed around. There are things that touch the building, so those kinds of things will be trimmed back. The plantings along that separate the property line between the library and the grove may be thinned out. So there could be some people who aren't too happy about the removal of some vegetation, but it's a trade-off. We kind of want to make sure the library survives a wildfire and
Yeah.
what's the roof made out of on this building?
It's not combustible.
Great,
Sometimes you have to worry about eaves, you know, the
Yeah.
fire came on.
yeah,
because-
the
That's all.
original building eaves have fire sprinklers
Okay.
under them. The addition does not have that, but there are things that we can do that help lessen the chances. So
So there'll be some type of proposal for that work, or do we have a landscape or company that will incorporate that into their regular maintenance?
I know Rick was meeting with Parks and Rec, who does a lot of our work, and Wyoming Landscape does some of the other work, and they've been doing cleanup this week, so I don't know if they were. But
But budget wise, hopefully it's either incorporated for, I mean, the small.
it would probably, likely there'll be an additional cost from what we normally budget, but we'll figure that out once we.
Yeah,
the sparkly water.
one thing too. So as Kip mentioned, Rick did meet with Wyoming Landscape earlier this week. Tomorrow. For this facility, Rick is meeting with JH Landscape, which does some of our snow removal. And what Rick is doing is he's asking each of them to kind of create a tiered pricing structure, so some of the project would be that related to pruning, removal of trees if necessary. A separate à la carte item would be the removal of weeding or so forth. So there will be different menu options. And then another potential possibility is in terms of maybe some more of the weeding, we might be able to get some library volunteers who like to garden who could do those projects at either location. So there may be some possibility to save some funding by maybe doing a gardening party with
I
volunteers.
actually love to. I'm not, so sign me up. Very therapeutic. Good.
What are you doing
I
Saturday?
like that idea.
Okay.
Later.
Overall, the project, I think, is going to be good. Partnership with the fire department, we can be used as an example of what others should be doing. So I think that would be an educational piece for the community, which could be nice.
I think you mentioned signage or some kind of awareness about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's really good.
The only other thing that I'll spend any time on, I think, would be the youth services manager position. The position announcement closed last week, or at the end of April, and we had a good number of applicants. A lot were not qualified, but so you kind of wonder why they applied in the first place. We had an interesting array of other professions apply, but anyway, we do have a good small candidate pool to move forward with, and we will be doing interviews next week, and hopefully an announcement by the end of the week next week. That's the plan.
Can I ask a quick question?
Yes,
What did Matt say about being yelled at? About teenagers being yelled at?
he said that teenagers didn't want to be yelled at.
By, by anybody or by little kids or what?
I'm guessing it would imply if the way they might have rules, library use rules enforced, maybe. He
Okay.
said it's a carryover into the community, so I think adults may not respect teenagers a lot of the time. So let's just blame the teenager for something and yell.
Okay, but,
Um,
all right.
I will say that we could treat them better on the adult side of the library. For the official record, I will say that.
Okay,
I think we sometimes think they are children and they're not, and they.
well, they are children, technically. They are older children, but they are children.
Well, we have adults who are children too, so.
Oh, this is who act like children. That's a different thing. Teenagers have they're still growing up.
Yes, and they're trying to find their way.
But
Yes.
to this point, there might be a subtle or poignant question, why do we do these interviews, right?
Yes,
That's the thing that's on the radar.
yes, yes. And then we have board vacancies, sadly. So the positions, the two vacancies have been posted and advertised. We're participating in one senior, at the senior center, a volunteer job fair. I know we'll be recruiting there. I don't know, you're all individually welcome to recruit as well.
Yeah, we chatted, I have talked to a few people.
It's,
I have had.
Yes.
Very,
That's
very exciting ones, yeah.
most people seem to think everybody's busy.
Everybody.
Yeah. So we'll see.
Okay, thank you, Kip. Anything else you want to tell us?
You can't think of anything.
I don't know if it was appropriate. Never mind.
Okay,
I do have a thought on library board positions. We're all pretty much in a position to be able to come to meetings in the middle of the morning. That, I think that diminishes. To have board meetings and.
But we could change it.
I know, that's why I'm just bringing that
well,
up.
we did try that last year.
Yeah.
And we didn't have much, well, we did it for the public more than
Right.
the board, I think. The public didn't materialize at the meeting, so.
But unless you
the
work for
board-
somebody who's very open to that,
Yeah.
I'm just saying, could it be at 8? Could it be in the midday? Could it be the end of the day?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
wouldn't we, like, once the new board's seated, talk about that?
Maybe, like,
Like,
if someone somebody in the
Yeah.
not fly,
Yeah.
clause, they can't take 3 hours.
yes.
So
We
that's
did
what,
that.
this, the July board meeting is at the time established in the bylaws, so that'll, and then at the July meeting, the new board can decide when and where they want to meet. So. Oh, and you have a drive next month.
Yes.
The June board meeting is in Alta.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, thank you so much, Kip. Diana.
Yes. Okay, you have our current fiscal year to date budget in front of you. This is our budget versus the actual report for library enhancements.
Diana, can I tell you something?
Yes, ma'am.
I have to leave
Okay.
because unfortunately I have another meeting in Wilson at 11. So no, it's nothing against you, but I'm probably gonna leave.
Oh. So you can see we are at about 60% spent on the budget. We just have a few large items that we know we're gonna be carrying over till next year. One of them being the EV chargers, as Kit mentioned, the 25,000. So we have a few large items. We had a $30,000 page to podium budgeted that we didn't do this year because we recently had the teen page to podium event in lieu of page to podium. And then, We have the book locker is still being considered as as library looks for a potential partner in the community. And I think that's pretty much some of the larger items that have not yet been funded as to why the budget is slightly under. Yes.
There are two items that will probably be asked to roll over, which would be the website costs and the book locker.
Yes, we anticipate rolling over the book locker for sure and the EV chargers for sure, knowing that you have an end of next fiscal year deadline. And then, okay, and then so the website redevelopment.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's also budgeted for this year. So we're right now currently in the budget phase process. So we are in the funding request process with the library staff and program managers. And so we're currently collecting all their worksheets for what the funding request is going to be for next year. They're also working with our consultant, Lisa Christian, on how to really define the intended impact or the intended outcome for their programs so that the foundation board can truly assess, what is the programmer see as, what's the goal of the program and how are we going to measure against that goal at the end of the year so that it feels like really responsible and accountable funding practices for some of the programs. And so we're really excited about this process. We meet with library staff on May 15th. And we have established a small working group within the foundation board of about 5 board members who will be visiting or meeting with library staff on May 15th to have this initial presentation of the library programs that are going to go through this process. So this is a pilot program. So we have just 4 library staff members that are participating. And so we're really excited about this. It's kind of what we're seeing it as a really great opportunity to integrate our two organizations in a way that feels really effective and responsible rather than we hold the purse strings and, we want you to jump through hoops to make sure that, that we feel good about this spending. But it's really more about how can we better understand what your goals are? How can we better, like this presentation that you got today is a perfect example. Matt is on that pilot program and we've been meeting, he and I have been meeting as we prepare for this meeting. And it's just so impressive when you get to hear, the research that's being done, when you get to hear the assessment of the need that's being identified and you get to hear what the goal is of the program in a more in-depth way. So we are really excited about that. So that's what we're working on right now. Just a few other housekeeping items. We are finalizing our website copy, we're in the final draft phase. So hoping to get that debut to our board before the end of the fiscal year. We're of course wrapping up end of fiscal year accounting. We're filing our 990 this week. And we have we have 3 retiring board members that have completed their terms. We have Karen Tara.
Oh, she's rotating off.
Yes, and we have Brian McDearman and Wendy Martinez. So we'll have 3 vacancies, but because we only have a minimum requirement of 5 and an optimum and a maximum of 13, we'll be at 11 for now. And because we have 1 new board member that will be joining us, if you're familiar with Shauna Lockhart.
Oh, I thought you were talking about Janice.
Janice joined our Friends Committee.
Got it.
Yes,
Okay.
so we do have we have 2 committees that can have that can have community members who are not considered board members. That is our events committee and our Friends Committee. So yes, so Janice is a member of our Friends Committee and Shauna has been for about 2 years a member of our events committee and now is moving into a position on the board. So we're really excited about that. And I think that's it that I wanted to share. Oh, a quick thank you about National Library Week that we held last month. It was, I think, a really, really exciting week. We had our resolution to the Board of County Commissioners, and as Kip shared with you via email, we received some really wonderfully supportive comments.
Yeah.
And so we sent a thank you to them for allowing us to do that and for really sharing their enthusiasm for the library and the impact that library has on the community. And then we had our special event, our open house day here on Thursday. I just wanted to commend the library staff who worked with the Library Foundation and Friends we were hoping to have an opportunity to bring in some of our donors and supporters who love the library, who've been asking us questions like, tell us more about the makerspace, or we want to learn more about the Library of Things. And so the two staff members in charge of those programs really, I mean, they just, they knocked it out of the park as far as I'm concerned. So Callie, who you met in the last meeting, who's in charge of the Wonder Lab, conducted about 4 tours that day, and they were fantastically informative, interactive, and everyone was so grateful. And then Mary Kelly, who runs the Library of Things, held a Library of Things petting zoo outside and set up, it was just so beautiful, set up some of the yard games, and it had tables of some of the, like, the blood pressure cuff and all of these, speakers and binoculars and all the things that people can check out. And we talked to some of our supporters who had a chance to look at them, and they were so impressed by the offerings that the library has that they weren't aware of. And I think what really touched my heart is at the end of the day, I volunteered to spend an hour running the petting zoo. And there was this family who was playing the cornhole game and just having a ball and looking over, and then one of the moms asked me to take her blood pressure. We were playing with their thing. And we were just playing with everything. And after this, they were a Spanish-speaking family with very limited English, and their son was a grade school interpreter for them. And the mom said, how much? Like, wanted to know how much it costs to rent some of this equipment. I said, no cost. And the little boy said, you mean all we need is our library card? And I said, yes. And I said, do you have a library card? And he said, yes. And he said, but how does it work? So we took him inside to show him how the process works. Here's the binder, here's how you
Sweet.
start the item. And he could not believe that he could take home the cornhole game to play at home. It was the most heartwarming.
Crying,
I
get it.
It was so cool. It was so cool. And I was like, okay, this is exactly what this day meant for us. And then we just had a really festive environment of giving away coffee and donuts in the morning to patrons who were just so excited. And it just felt like a party here in the library. And I just want you guys to know that we are so grateful for this partnership. And we just absolutely love working with the library and staff who makes this place so special for our community. So
Thank you for sharing.
You know, amazing. All of your donors been forwarded the link to watch the film.
Speaking of the
The
grant,
library.
I did, I tried out that too.
oh no, that's a great recommendation.
It's so good, Diana. Oh,
You're
my
like,
gosh.
a documentary about libraries, like, oh yeah, okay, it was gonna be boring. It is not.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Really,
you.
really
I
good.
will
It's
be
called
on it.
Free for All. Something public libraries, and it's on PBS, and you can stream it, because I'm not sure we have actually PBS on it yet.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
And is there a login required to stream
Yeah,
it?
stream it.
You can just
No,
stream
no.
it for free.
I'll send you the link.
Okay, and I've sent it. You think you
Yeah.
sent it to
yeah,
me?
if you-
Yeah.
Okay, I will definitely, what a great suggestion. What
Yeah.
a great suggestion.
Yeah, I think it will like warm their hearts and.
And
Yeah.
like these 2 people who are interested in applying for the board, I sent them that. I'm like, you could not be able to not apply.
Oh, I love that. Oh my gosh. Thank you, Mary Lee.
It's so true.
It's really, really well done.
Yeah.
I also wanted to ask one final question before I'm done here is I met with Mary Lee and Vicky. We had a really fun orientation about the Library Foundation and Friends. And one of the questions I asked was on how can I help you like with reporting? I used to have this report, this 1-page report is something I inherited when I got here, this format. And I told Kip, what is really the information that you would like to know to have me include on some of these, other than financial, to see how we're supporting the library financially? Is there anything specific that you feel like, I mean, is this verbal report sufficient, or would you like something in writing that goes into more detail?
I like that there's a pre-read if possible.
Okay,
I mean,
great.
Just kind of, I think it's helpful to get questions ready, whatever. But I love that you're sending it verbally as well.
Yeah, don't stop coming to the board meetings.
Okay, great.
And the stories are absolutely best.
Yeah.
You know, the story about the family reporting. You just really, good season.
Yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely. I'm gonna retell that to me. Thank you, Diana.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No, that's it. for
Okay.
me.
And you're gonna go.
I'm gonna go.
Let us maybe move on then. We have two more agenda items. The award for the contract for the library website redesign. I'm sure we all read the report. I don't know.
Oh, I see people.
I have a lot of questions. So, all sounds good. I feel this. Is it a complete redesign? I was a little.
Yes.
Complete redesign.
We're-
It's actually very cost effective for that. I'm
I
surprised.
think
So I just want to make sure.
the platform we're on currently is more designed for a government office that doesn't do a whole lot with interacting with the public, so we've adapted it quite well, but it's not very effective, as you know, from the community surveys and stuff during strategic planning, that it's not a very effective or very well liked website. So this is the result of our internal web committee, and still won't still talk about any of that.
I mean, I have redone websites at prior organizations and it's not inexpensive, and this seemed really pretty reasonable for the size and like requirement to interact with it. So, I mean, that seemed to me like good, and the company, like, they just work with libraries. So I also thought that was a asset.
We did go out for reference checks, and every single reference check was glowing.
Oh, good.
Um,
Because they will continue to kind of consult, and if there are problems, they'll troubleshoot with the IT staff here. Or it'll just be a handover when it's done.
It'll be kind of a handover. They're available for support. Should we have anything, they continue to update and upgrade the platform that it runs on, so we'll continue to see improvements over time.
Okay.
So it's under budget and we've allotted for staff. We always know when you put something new up, it's always more work than you expect, so as long as that's taken into consideration.
They were the one of the two that ended up being viable. They were the one that said they would move everything over for us, and then we can tweak it or change it or whatever, but they'll work with.
Oh,
I
that's
think
great.
there's a some sort of community study to see what the community would like to see on a website. I'm not sure how they go about that process. And then they'll train staff on how to update or change things.
Any other questions? What's the timeline? Maybe I missed that. Like, when do you hope to have it all?
I think the 20 weeks was 20 week max. It could be a little less than that, depending on what we decide to move over and not move over.
And so it'll be like, they'll be working behind the scenes, and then like, when it's ready, it'll be like brand new.
I think so.
Whoa,
And the ongoing cost is actually less than what we're currently paying.
Oh,
so.
good, okay, great. Well, anything else from any board members? Okay, well, I'll make the motion that the board approve the award of contract to Library Market for website design and hosting services in the amount of $12,450, with the understanding that the final contract will be presented to the board at its June regular meeting.
Second.
I second.
Great, any discussion?
Sorry, I just
No, please.
I just realized something that is in the report that maybe just to make clarification for the motion. This 12,000 is half
I was gonna
initial
mention
payment,
that.
just to make that.
Well,
clear.
isn't the other half coming from the Foundation and Friends? So I wanted
Yes.
to thank the Foundation and Friends. That's amazing.
And so
Okay.
that other half is due upon completion of the project, which will take us into the next fiscal year, which is why. I hadn't yet gotten a talk to Diana about rolling over that amount into
Got it.
fiscal.
Yeah.
So I just, as you were reading that, all of a sudden I got, oh, I better.
That's
Let's make
great.
sure
Thank
that
you.
everybody is clear and understanding that.
There will
this
be
is-
another
Correct.
Yes, okay.
And the hosting services, the annual ongoing cost is actually in the next fiscal year budget, and so will be invoiced separately for that, so it took a while to sort of figure out dollar amounts yesterday, but
That makes more sense.
Yeah.
And one last thing, I just wanna make sure graphically, I felt like it was a little, their examples are cookie cutter, maybe that's why, how they do it. So just making sure that your graphics department works with them, that it feels like Teton County Library.
That's-
Station.
they've made that clear. And if you look at some of their other sites, you'll see that they kind of match the local libraries. It, yes, it probably is templates,
Yes,
um,
the
but-
templates can be, yeah, and you're not gonna ever compare them, I just wanna make sure that it's like. Our library,
Thanks.
great.
Okay, all in favor then?
Aye.
None opposed. All right, thank you. All right, last, item, library use policy and rules, and this is about food in the library, so pretty simple, but anything you wanna,
well, we kind of said we weren't gonna open the policy just to change food.
oh,
We had opened it to look at a couple of other aspects, and as we discussed the other pieces that we wanted to change and talk to legal, we ended up not making those changes, but we thought, well, we've had this discussion. There's a willingness among the larger group finally to amend the food policy. So we thought we would jump on it and make that change now, especially as we start to look at moving teams here or there, and we have a meeting with the coffee cart folks tomorrow, and we want to talk about having food as an option on the cart. So things like that, we want to make it so that people are comfortable. And so that's the only item that we wanted to change in the policy. In the original policy, numbers 11 and 12 addressed food not allowed except in the lobby, and 12 was about beverages. And so we've just combined those into a new number 11. And it's just nice to see the word vermin in the policy, so.
what's policy about vermin?
So, that was written, in consultation with, our facilities folks who end up having to. They
Clean it up.
provide a lot of the training to staff on how to enforce these rules and stuff, so that was written with their approval. So that's where we landed, and that's what we would like to change.
Makes sense to me.
Hey,
And I appreciated the like. Having it be explicit, that like it's allowed as long as you're responsible is probably gonna create less of a mess than people sneaking in food and trying to like eat it.
Yes, which they
they're already
do, they
doing.
do.
Right, so this, yeah, this seems great. All right, any
I-
questions?
I didn't read anything in there, but I'm just assuming that it would open up the possibility of vending machines down the road. As we read, you know,
Could be.
Yeah.
I know that was in one of EUA's proposals, showed the vending area. The coffee cart with snacks first would be a good start, so.
I have things, 2 questions, voters. Are not really mentioned, I don't think.
It says, I think you can have it covered in a manner that disrupts other patrons. If somebody's got a really big, yeah.
So just that,
It-
I
it's-
also think we're gonna need to increase our leave budget, I'll be honest. So just put it on the radar. I just sat at an airport and little airport, whatever club, and it was, you know, it's just messy, it's gonna take more. People do the best they can, but I put it on the radar, but let's see what the comments are, we have 35 days.
I will say,
Yeah.
over the years in libraries I've worked in where food is allowed, there haven't been that, I mean, somebody might spill a beverage, somebody still, I mean, that currently happens.
Sure.
You have somebody who has a pizza delivered, you do ask them to take that out to the lobby because that's gonna be messy. So I think through enforcement, it shouldn't be too impactful.
Okay, anything else? Do I have a motion?
I move to accept the suggestion that we present this to the community about the food in the proposed library use.
We're opening it to a 45-day public comment.
Yes.
Okay,
Yes,
That's the
that's
next.
Yeah.
sufficient. Okay, great. Any second?
Second.
Second, any more discussion? Okay, so the motion to open the proposed library use policy and rules for 45-day public comment period passes.
Great.
And anything else from any of us around this table? Diana?
Just wanted to give a shout out to Stan.
Yes.
For National Library Week, Stan came and helped serve the staff appreciation luncheon. He came to set up and serve, and I wanted to say thank you, Stan.
See. Yes, that's great.
The only other thing I noticed the Virginians going through some pains, so that's what we want to see. I don't know that we need to discuss it, but it is interesting to be changing so quickly.
I have not read.
Like a $31 million shortfall because
So
of
headline.
current shift, very quick shifts.
Oh, geez.
That's
It's gonna be
not
a
small.
small path.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
Aye. Lisa,
yes.
I don't think we voted on